Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going to be doing a technique with embossing folders, and we are going to be using a white pigment ink for this. Now, I have the Hero Arts Unicorn white pigment ink. That's the one that I use, but there are other white pigment inks out there that will work. Now, you want to start off with a mid-range color, a sort of mid-blue, I guess, is what I'm going to use to begin with. I have my white pigment ink ready to go. And then, of course, you're going to need your embossing folders. Now, this one here is the Bold Floral Drape. This one here is the Calming Cluster. And the last one I have is the Ambridge Bouquet. Now, these happen to all be from Altenew. They don't have to be at all. These are all 3D embossing folders, but this one here from Dries is it's a 2D embossing folder, and this technique seems to work with this too. But as always, just experiment with what you have and give it a go, because the worst that can happen is that it doesn't work. And that's okay. And absolutely, not everything that I try works first try as well. And so we have to try again or modify something or try something a little bit different to see if I can get it to work. Now, I am going to start off, as I said, with the mid blue. I have the Bold Floral Drape embossing folder here. And you want to use the side that is raised. So essentially, we are going to be pushing white ink down into the images. So the side that is raised, and then you're going to take your white ink pad and just gently tap it over the image. Now, you do want to try and make sure that you just get the image. I think having your ink pad not too juicy for this is definitely best. I re-inked my ink pad, my white ink pad, about 3/4 of the way through this video, and I must admit it definitely was trickier to get the white ink to stay up on the raised images. But I did want to experiment with it and see if a juicy ink pad made it easier or trickier. The answer is it makes it a bit trickier. So somewhere in between is good. So here is what I have done. This is one pass through my embossing folder. Now I'm actually going to do another one here just so that you can see a comparison. And you can ink this up in exactly the same way. I'm going to use a fresh piece of blue cardstock and pop this in. And then I lay it down on the other side, and you can even, make sure you've got it lined up in the place where you want it to. Pick up the embossing folder, and then I close the ink side down on it. Now this here is one. Now don't move the other side that has the paper, and re-ink this, and then it should, because at this point it's kind of slotted in to the image that you have embossed, and so that paper's not shifting around super easy. And so I just ink this up again, and then I close the embossing folder again, just doesn't have to be too gently, and run it through again. And this is going to give us a little bit more depth to the ink that we've added, because essentially we have 2 layers now. So you can see, I think, a slight difference. Now we do have to bear in mind that one is more dry than the other at this point. But I will just say that it does make a small difference, but if you don't want to do that, then it works fine without it as well. Now I'm going to take the Calming Cluster 3D embossing folder, and I'm using some Gina Grass Green. This is, around about a mid-green color. I have to work with what I have because I don't have a whole lot of colored cardstock on hand. Again, this one has sort of an image, a little cluster of flowers, as the name would suggest. And so I just am really trying hard to make sure I get the ink only on the raised portions. Now, if you get a little bit on the other portion, it is what it is. Don't stress about it, and you'll still be able to make a beautiful, we can disguise anything. We can work with anything, and where there's a will, there's a way. And there's always another way as well, right after that. So we can make it work. You can see that this one did get a little halo of ink around it, but actually it's going to work out just fine. And I'm going to do 2 layers of ink for this one as well. So I've just opened up the folder and left the other side flat down, so it's not moving. It's still sitting in its little grooves that it was embossed upon. And then I'm going to run this through for a second time, and I get a pretty good impression. You absolutely can see a little halo of ink, but I don't think that matters too much. Now I'm going to take a darker color. This one happens to be the Uncharted Mariner of the Distress Oxide, and I want to come in light because essentially with this we want to leave some of the mid blue that we already started with. We want the white ink on the mid blue to create another color, a lighter blue. And then we're coming in with a darker blue just on the raised areas. And I'm coming in fairly lightly, to be honest. If you push harder, you're just going to get, sort of 2 colours of the blue, but we want there to be 3. And I think in the centres around these flowers, you can definitely see that mid blue that we started off with. And I think this is just a really easy, gorgeous look to achieve. So I'm going to do the same thing here with the green, and for this one, I am going to use another Distress Oxide ink. This is the Rustic Wilderness, and there's no reason that I am using oxide inks. You could use dye inks. You can use pigment inks here as well. This was just, I'm using my oxides and they're out ready to go, but I think that any inks are going to work really easily for this technique as well. Now, I do think this would also work really well if you wait for the white ink to dry. Mine was halfway dry. It was mid-dry. And this is where we can kind of get rid of that halo that we created earlier on. So I'm coming in lightly, and I'm really not touching the inside of the flowers or anything, because that has that mid-green that we started off with. So super simple technique, and yet we end up with sort of 3 gorgeous colours. Now let's turn these into some beautiful cards. I have the, this is the Airless Mister from Cosmic Shimmer. I have been trying out a few of the sort of glimmer mists, shimmer mists, all those things. Now, I did try a good handful of different companies, and I will say there's a big difference. Some of them did not even go right out of the bat, right out of brand new, out of packaging, and they all got clogged. This Airless Mister, you can see that there is actually no tube that comes down. And so these, I think, were my favorite spray pattern. Is that the right word? Where, it was the right amount of mist. It came out with a beautiful mist. You can also create some bigger droplets if you want to. This is the Pearlescent one. I will have these all linked down below. I have a couple of favorites that I definitely sort of came out with a nice even spray. They had a nice color to them. They were very obvious and not super subtle that you couldn't see the shine, all the good things. So I'm going to be using a couple of these today, and I'm going to cut both of these down because I want them to go on a background, of course, on a card base. And I thought I would choose some card bases that I probably wouldn't usually lean towards. This one here is the Dark Chocolate from Gina, which is just a dark brown colour. And then for the other one, this is not so out there, but this is the Lawn Fawn Kraft coloured cardstock, and this is my favourite one. It's a nice heavyweight cardstock for card bases, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a couple. If I'm getting out a full sheet anyhow, I may as well make some, either a couple of card bases, or I will split them up and make some card fronts while I'm at it, because no doubt in future I will use them. So I may as well just, do a couple while I'm at it. This is actually how I create all of my card bases and my card fronts. I do all of my own cutting. I just buy full sheets of the Frenchville brand cardstock, which is £110. I buy that from Spotlight here in New Zealand, and I know that they sell it in Australia as well. Now, I didn't want to add a whole nother matting layer to these cards that I was creating, but I do want to add some texture. Now, that means I'm actually going to run my whole card front through my machine. This is the organic linen embossing folder from Altenew. And this just gives the look, a really gorgeous, now of course it is embossed on the inside too, that doesn't bother me, of course, I just think it's a really nice added texture. I'm also going to do this to the chocolate cardstock, the dark chocolate, and I really like that. I do just want to quickly show you something, how you can bring this out a bit more. This is the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, so just a brown ink, and then if you want to bring out that texture a little bit more, then go over it with a light brown, or you might even have a Kraft coloured ink as well, and just experiment, and you can see that it brings out just a little bit more texture. I've gone over pretty lightly, quite lightly, and I will hold this next to the one that is has no ink. So, you can see the texture probably a little bit more. It's brought out with that ink. And then, of course, you can take this as far as you would like to. So if you want to, you could also add definitely a much heavier layer of ink, and then you can see that texture really come out because it's going to miss all of those gaps. And so you have sort of, none, and then light, and then darker. So there are always lots of options if you want to transform even just those textured backgrounds. Now, I think this is really nice, but when I put this down here, it almost felt a little bit, it just felt like it was missing a layer. It was missing something. Now, there are two ways that I think you could go about this. I'm sitting here tapping and thinking out which one I want to do. I think you could either add a darker blue layer. Now we use the Uncharted Mariner for the background there, and then we did add the Airless Mister, the Pearlescent Shine on top of it. This is the only dark blue cardstock I had, but I just felt like it wasn't the right blue. It was introducing a whole nother blue, and it just wasn't quite right. I probably could have gotten away with it when I look at the editing here, but I just think it wasn't quite a match. So actually, I did think using this white here, that could actually look quite nice. I think that also brings it out, and it would have matched the sentiment. Anywho, I'm going to bring in the Uncharted Mariner, and I'm going to quickly whip around the edges here and create a matting layer. And I'm glad I did this because, you know, I didn't want to add one for the texture of the background, and so I ended up adding another matting layer anyway. So adding 4 pieces of cardstock to the front would have made the card quite heavy. And then these are the sentiments, the printable sentiments that I have on my website. These are so handy to me. I just have a whole bunch of these fussy cut out. I am definitely in the phase of life at the moment where we have sports 7 days a week, and so I am just running here, there, and everywhere. So having a little pile of things that I can fussy cut out is works out really well for me. And these sentiments are free. They are free for anyone. They are under free resources on my website, natashafootecreative.com. And yeah, you can just print them out in your own. You could even print them out on coloured cardstock, or you could change the colour to a coloured ink, and then you can print them out, and there you go. Then for this one, I did add some gold thread, a little bit of shine element, because the shimmer that I added on was also gold, and it's really hard to catch the shimmer. I must admit, in the video, it looks far more impressive in real life. I did really struggle to catch the shimmer for you guys to see, but there is quite a lot. And then I added a few of the bigger drops on there, and I quite like that too. Now, popping this down with my little trick so that everything is nice and even, and this is a simple but beautiful card that was actually pretty quick to make. Both of these were pretty quick. And then I had this extra little scrap that I trimmed down, and this was sort of too good to not use, and I love the contrast on the Kraft cardstock here. So actually this little scrap, I thought, why not just pop this down the side? I really love it. It's got the shimmer, it's got the texture, and it's not going to add too much weight to the card, so I popped this down the side, and I really like that too. I used some of the art glitter glue, which is going to dry nice and fast, and then nice and strong as well, because it's right on the edges of that card, and I didn't want it lifting up. Cut off that little excess piece that's popping off the end, but that is card number 1 done and dusted. Very easy, very shimmery, has lots of lovely texture and lots of depth with all those different layers. This one here I'm going to do with very, very simple. This is a Thinking of You that again is printed from those free printables, and I just use circle dies to do these. You might have a punch that fits these as well as circle punch, but I just use a circle die from the Hero Arts Infinity die set. There are a couple in there depending on how much border you want around them. There are a couple that fit really nicely for those. I pop a little bit of foam tape. This is the 1mm 1-inch foam tape from scrapbook.com, and then I will pop this up the top. So this one is super simple, but I really like it. It's lovely for a Thinking of You card. So those are the 2 cards today using the white ink with embossing folders. Thank you so much for joining me. Of course, there will be links down below. Don't forget to go to my website and grab those free printables, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks, bye.